The towel slipped from my hands, but I didn't flinch. Her laugh, a dry, hollow chuckle that bounced off the laundry room tiles, hung in the air like mildew. "You're lucky I even let you touch me," she said. Like I was some leper who'd won a raffle. Like decades of providing, fixing, covering her mistakes, and paying off her credit card messes were just some pathetic tribute she tolerated out of politeness. She turned away, humming, tossing her blouse into the dryer like nothing had happened. I just watched her. Not angry, not even sad. Something quieter, sharper. I folded the last t-shirt, that old one from the state fair we went to, before her veneers, before her Pilates instructor with the ridiculous name, before she stopped asking how my day was. I folded it with more care than I'd handled her in months. Then I placed it neatly on the stack and walked out. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. A giggle. Another message from whoever she thought was her escape hatch. Her voice changed when she texted lately. Eerier, like she was suddenly 20 again. I used to like that sound. Now it just reminded me how good liars always enjoy the setup. I passed the hall mirror. Wrinkled? Sure. Slower than I was at 40? Maybe. But I built machines that carved titanium to half a human hair's width. I ran a team of 20 men who didn't dare miss a measurement. I wasn't some slob hoping for scraps of affection. But in this house, I was a placeholder. And placeholders don't argue. We execute. Downstairs, I opened the office drawer I hadn't touched since I printed out her client meeting calendar from iCloud. The one that contained one too many Tuesday dinners at the Burstone, none of them billed to the brokerage account. Inside was the box, a small oak thing I'd carved after retiring. It was supposed to hold cufflinks. Instead, it held clarity. I set it in the center of the desk. Still empty, but not for long. I flipped open my laptop. No rush, no drama. Just a man doing what he always did, cataloging, protecting, cleaning up someone else's mess. First came the emails. A realtor friend, Celeste, had CC'd her on fun weekend plans in Ridge Hill, dates that matched perfectly with the so-called training retreats. One even included a rental car receipt in Vanessa's name with a second driver listed. Not me. Then the texts. 6 months ago, I synced her phone to the family iPad. She never noticed. Thought it was just for Netflix in the guest room. I took screenshots, sweet messages to a contractor we'd once hired to fix our deck. I'd offered the man a beer. He'd thanked me like a son. One message froze me more than the rest. He's nice but dull. A placeholder. My life started late. Dull. Placeholder. I clicked save and dropped it all into a folder labeled June Justice. Encrypted. Backed up. Copied 3 times. One on the flash drive, one in the cloud, and one somewhere she'd never think to look. The box wouldn't stay empty much longer. And neither would my patience. It started small. They always do. Vanessa had this habit of wearing her affectionate wife robe when she wanted to play house. White satin, a little frayed at the sleeves, the kind she thought made her look effortlessly beautiful. She came down in it that night, makeup off, tone soft. "You didn't say good night," she murmured, tilting her head like I'd just forgotten my manners. "I figured you were tired of touching me," I said, smiling. She blinked. A flicker of something, confusion, maybe suspicion, crossed her face before she recovered. "You're being dramatic." I nodded, slow, letting her believe she'd diffused me. Because men like me, we don't need second chances. We need evidence. That earned me a little smirk. She thought I was bluffing. Later, I stood in the hallway outside our bedroom, listening. She'd dozed off with her tablet sliding off her chest, some real estate podcast still playing. From the glow of the screen, I could see her face twitch in her sleep, maybe dreaming she was still the prize she imagined herself to be, holding court in beige SUVs and open houses no one could afford. Downstairs, the printer hummed. Another batch of emails slid into the tray, Celeste's fun weekend invites. Flight confirmations, hotel bills. I stacked them neatly, then slid them into the oak box. Still only half full. Vanessa always thought I didn't check receipts. And maybe I didn't until now. Patterns mattered more than paper, and she left them everywhere. That week, I started making subtle moves. Canceled the shared credit card under the guise of fraud protection. Ordered a new lockbox for the garage and kept the only key. Transferred my savings into an account under my old business name, one she'd forgotten existed. She didn't notice. Or maybe she thought I was too dull to have a reason. The first crack came on a Wednesday morning. She was on the phone in the kitchen, laughing too sweetly. When she hung up, She turned to find me leaning in the doorway. Who was that? I asked. Just a client, she said without missing a beat. I smiled like I believed her. Then why's he calling you baby girl? Her eyes narrowed. A quick recovery. Inside joke. You wouldn't get it. I walked past her, brushing her shoulder. You're right. I wouldn't. The truth was, I already did. And she had no idea just how much I'd get before this was over. Vanessa always thought she was a master of subtlety. Truth was, she was about as subtle as a fire alarm. 3 days after our baby girl exchange, she staged a little performance. Came into the kitchen dressed sharper than her usual client visits. Black dress, red heels she used to reserve for anniversaries. Hair pinned up, perfume I hadn't smelled in years. Late showing tonight, she said casually, pouring coffee. Might grab dinner with Celeste after. I kept my eyes on the paper, nodding like a man too busy for suspicion. Take your time. She hesitated, probably expecting me to ask questions, maybe even offer to join her. When I didn't, she brightened, kissed my cheek, and left with a swing in her step. The moment the door clicked, I was in motion. I didn't follow her, not in person. Too obvious. Instead, I opened the family iPad. The location sharing feature was still on, courtesy of that Netflix in the guest room setup she thought was just for streaming. At 6:17 p.m., her pin landed on the Burstone Hotel. By 6:32, she was on the move again, east, toward Ridge Hill. By 6:49, the location froze in a little Italian place with dim lighting and overpriced wine. I screenshotted every jump. At 8:03, she texted me, running late, wrapping up with Celeste. At 8:04, the iPad pinged her still firmly seated at that restaurant. Except the reservation was for two under the name Cole. She walked in at 10:41 p.m., cheeks flushed, hair slightly mussed. She set her purse down on the counter, eyes scanning mine for a tell. How was dinner? I asked. Fine, she said, a little too quickly. We might get that listing in Ridge Hill. I let a beat pass. Tell Cole I said congratulations. Her eyes flickered. What? Your reservation name, I said, smiling faintly. Thought you said you were with Celeste. She laughed, too loud, too sharp. Oh, Cole's the host. He knows Celeste. We all sat together. I nodded slowly, filing away the fact that she lied twice in under 10 seconds. Then I went back to my paper like it was Sunday morning. Thing about rope, if you keep handing it over, they'll use it. And if you're patient, they'll wrap it around their own neck without you lifting a finger. The thing about a lie is it's like cheap wallpaper. Leave it up long enough and the seams start to show. It was Saturday morning, a week after the Cole incident, and Vanessa was moving through the house in full domestic charade mode. Jazz on the speaker, pancakes on the griddle, humming just loud enough for me to hear upstairs. When she was feeling guilty, she liked to play wife. She thought it bought her cover. I stayed in the office, sorting through my files. The oak box was filling nicely, printouts, screenshots, statements, each one labeled, dated, and sealed in a plastic sleeve. Precision was my business. And right now, my business was dismantling hers. At 10:13 a.m., I heard her phone buzz on the kitchen counter. Then buzz again. Then a third time. Her humming faltered. She walked quickly to the phone. But not quickly enough. I'd stepped into the doorway just in time to catch the screen lighting up. Room's ready. Same suite as last time. See. She tilted the phone away from me like a kid hiding a bad report card. Spam, she said lightly. Spam that knows your favorite hotel suite. I asked. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It's a running joke. Right? I said, keeping my tone flat. Because you and Cole, the host/waiter/whatever he is, have a lot of inside jokes. For a second, her jaw tightened. That's when I knew I was wearing down the edges of her performance. The cracks were showing. She spun away, muttering something about burning the pancakes, and I let her go. No confrontation, no blow-up. Not yet. People who think they're winning get sloppy, and I wanted her at her sloppiest when I closed the book on this marriage. By Monday, I had my next move ready. It came in the form of a manila envelope, not for her, but for a man named Elliot Vance. Elliot was the regional manager of the brokerage where Vanessa worked. I'd met him twice, both times at holiday parties where he hovered too long by the dessert table and laughed too hard at his own jokes. Inside the envelope, copies of her client meeting hotel receipts, screenshots of the messages with Cole, a timeline of her absences during peak sales periods, and, for flair, a single-page note. You might want to review the company code of conduct before your name ends up on the wrong kind of paperwork. I didn't mail it. Not yet. It stayed in my desk drawer, a loaded round-eyed fire when the time was right. The oak box was my evidence chest. The envelope was my ammunition. Vanessa's unraveling came midweek, courtesy of her own ego. She was in the kitchen, sipping wine and scrolling her phone, when she called out, "Guess who just closed a deal in Ridge Hill?" I leaned against the doorway. "Cole." The flicker in her eyes was instant. "You're hilarious." "I try." She launched into a story about the sale, conveniently omitting who the buyer was or why the meeting had been at the Burstone instead of the property itself. But then she slipped, mentioned, "We celebrated at dinner," before catching herself and changing it to, I celebrated with a nice dinner." I didn't react, just made a mental note and let her keep talking, because here's the thing. When someone's busy performing, they forget the script. Thursday night was when the thread finally snagged. We were supposed to have dinner with friends, an older couple we'd known for years. People who actually liked me, which I think annoyed Vanessa more than she'd admit. An hour before we were supposed to leave, she appeared in the doorway of my office, hair done, lipstick perfect, dress tailored to make an impression. "I'm heading out," she said. "Dinner's not for another hour. Change of plans. Celeste and I are grabbing drinks first." She was already halfway out the door before I could answer. Not that I needed to, because I'd already seen the Burstone reservation confirmation pop up on the synced iPad earlier that day. At 7:42 p.m., she texted, "Running late. Order for me if they get there first." At 7:43 p.m., my phone buzzed with a photo from a contact labeled Silent Witness, a retired PI I'd hired 2 weeks ago. The photo showed Vanessa on the Burstone balcony, wine glass in hand, Cole leaning against the rail beside her, both of them laughing at something only cheaters find funny. By the time she breezed into the restaurant at 8:19 p.m., I already had the photos filed in the oak box and a backup on a flash drive in my jacket pocket. "How were drinks?" I asked. "Good," she said without hesitation. "Celeste says hi." I smiled. "Tell her I said thanks for keeping you company." If she noticed the weight behind my words, she didn't show it. She just reached for the breadbasket and changed the subject. That night, while she slept, I worked. I drafted 3 emails. To Elliot Vance, with the manila envelopes scanned and attached. To the company's HR director, linking the behavior to specific policy violations. To Vanessa's mother, because sometimes the most effective revenge isn't just about destroying a career, but dismantling the audience that cheers from the sidelines. I didn't send them. Not yet. Timing is everything. A revenge too early is just a tantrum. A revenge perfectly timed? That's a masterpiece. Friday morning, she slipped. Bad. We were in the kitchen, both reaching for coffee, when her phone rang. The caller ID flashed C. She snatched it up, stepping toward the hallway. "Hey, baby," she said softly. Then she froze, realizing I was standing right behind her. She hung up without another word, shoved the phone in her purse, and turned with a too bright smile. "Work call." "Sounded personal," I said. She tried to laugh it off. "You're hearing things again." But her hands were shaking as she poured her coffee. That's when I knew she was starting to feel the ground shift beneath her feet. And the more she scrambled, the faster she'd sink. That night, I added the latest screenshots to the oak box and locked it. It was nearly full now, the brass hinges straining against the growing weight. I ran my hand over the smooth wood, thinking about how she'd once told me I was too methodical to be dangerous. She was about to learn just how dangerous methodical can be. Because tomorrow I'd start the part she'd never see coming. Saturday morning looked ordinary enough. Sunlight streaming in through the blinds, the smell of coffee drifting up the stairs, the muffled sound of Vanessa's voice on the phone. She was in her robe, pacing the kitchen, one hand cradling her mug, the other gesturing like she was presenting at a conference. From the cadence, it wasn't a work call, it was Cole. I didn't need to hear every word to know it. The laugh gave her away. Not her real laugh, the one I knew. This one was light, girlish, high-pitched. Her, "I'm still 20" laugh. I stepped into the doorway just as she said, "I can't wait either." Same place. When she saw me, she froze mid-step. "Morning," I said evenly. "Who's that?" Her smile faltered for only a second before sliding back into place. "Celeste. We're planning a girls' brunch." I nodded, poured myself coffee, and walked past her. "Good." You two have a lot to catch up on. I left it there because the first drop of my plan didn't need me to push. It was already set in motion. By 10 o'clock, she'd showered, dressed, and slipped into a navy dress I'd never seen before, shorter than her usual, cut to flatter in ways her client dresses didn't dare. She was halfway out the door when I stopped her. You taking the BMW? Yeah, why? Just making sure it's gassed up. Wouldn't want you stranded. She gave me a curious look, then left. What she didn't know was that, 2 days ago, I'd had my PI install a GPS tracker in that BMW, one that updated every 30 seconds and fed live data to an app on my phone. I'd also had him slip a tiny wireless mic under the driver's seat. Nothing illegal. I wasn't recording private spaces. Just the car. A vehicle I owned. The tracker pinged her in real time. Straight to the Burstone Hotel, no detours. She parked. 10 minutes later, she was on the move again, walking toward a boutique cafe 3 blocks away. The mic caught the start of the conversation as she got in Cole's car. You look incredible, he said. You always say that, she replied, voice dripping with that same feigned shyness I used to think was real. You make me feel alive. I didn't listen to the rest. I'd already heard enough over the last month to fill a novel. What mattered now wasn't gathering, it was deploying. Step 1 of deployment, the envelope. While Vanessa enjoyed her girls' brunch, I drove to Elliot Vance's office. The receptionist wasn't in yet. It was Saturday, so I slid the sealed manila envelope under his door. On the front, I'd written in neat block letters, urgent, employee conduct issue. I didn't stick around to watch him find it. I didn't need to. The beauty of that package was that it carried its own momentum. Once Elliot opened it, HR would have no choice but to investigate. And once they investigated, they'd see exactly how deep Vanessa's extracurricular activities had been cutting into company time and reputation. Step 2, the family strike. At 1:17 p.m., while she was still downtown, I sent an email to her mother. Subject line, thought you should know before you hear it elsewhere. Attached, 3 of the cleaner photos from the PI, showing Vanessa at the Burstone with Cole, timestamped, and 1 screenshot of her texting him from our kitchen. I didn't add commentary. I didn't have to. Her mother was the type who cared more about appearances than anything else. The kind of woman who could weather scandal, but not the embarrassment of being the last to know about it. This wasn't just a warning. It was a preemptive strike against Vanessa's support system. Step 3, the stage. I drove to the Ridge Hill Italian restaurant. Yes, the same one where she dined with Cole under the reservation Cole. I walked in, smiled at the hostess, and handed her a printed photo of Vanessa and Cole on the Burstone balcony. If these two show up, I said calmly, make sure they get seated by the front window, and bring them the bottle of red from my reservation at 7 o'clock. I'll be covering it from across the street. The hostess glanced at the photo, then back at me, eyebrow raised. Okay, I tipped her enough to make it worth her time. At 3:46 p.m., the tracker showed Vanessa heading home. I was already there, sitting at the dining table with my laptop open, pretending to review old invoices. She walked in carrying a small shopping bag, something lacy peeked out from the top. Productive day? I asked. She set the bag down quickly. Yeah. Celeste says hi. Of course she does. She didn't catch the weight in my tone. She poured herself a glass of wine and vanished upstairs. That evening, I dressed simply. Dark jacket, no tie, the kind of outfit that let me blend in. At 6:45, I was sitting in a small coffee shop across from the Ridge Hill restaurant. At 7:03, the tracker pinged her car pulling into the lot. 2 minutes later, she and Cole walked in, laughing, her hand brushing his arm. The hostess led them straight to the window table. A bottle of red arrived moments later, courtesy of a friend. Vanessa looked around briefly, probably assuming it was a client or acquaintance. She smiled and poured them each a glass. From my seat, I watched as she leaned in close to Cole, touching his wrist when she laughed. Cole, oblivious to the trap closing around him, smiled back like he'd just won the lottery. I took my phone out and snapped 3 clear photos through the window, enough to capture the wine, the hand-holding, the way she looked at him. Not grainy PI shots. Crisp, undeniable. Then I sent one of the photos to Elliot Vance. No message, no subject line, just the picture. By 7:50 p.m., I was back home. Vanessa walked in at 9:12, flushed, the faint scent of the restaurant's marinara clinging to her clothes. Dinner with Celeste again? I asked. Yes, she said without blinking. Why? I smiled. Just curious. She poured herself more wine and settled onto the couch with her tablet. I could see the faintest tremor in her hands when she thought I wasn't looking. That was good. It meant the first drop had landed. At 10:03 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Is this Mr. Turner? A man's voice asked. Yes. This is Elliot Vance. I think we need to talk about your wife. I didn't look at her. I just stared at the oak box on my desk, the weight of it promising that this was only the beginning. Tomorrow, I said, keeping my voice steady. Let's meet tomorrow. Sunday morning broke quiet. Too quiet. Vanessa was up earlier than usual, padding around the kitchen in her robe, sipping coffee and tapping at her phone. She looked like a woman trying to act normal while waiting for a call she didn't want me to overhear. I'd already arranged my morning with precision. At 8:15, I walked into the kitchen, phone to my ear, pretending to finish a conversation. Right, Elliot, I'll see you at 10, I said clearly enough for her to hear. Her hand froze on her mug. Elliot, she asked. I glanced up like I'd forgotten she was there. Vance. From your office. Her face was a controlled mask, but her eyes flicked, quick as a heartbeat, like she was running through a mental checklist of everything Elliot might know. Why would you be talking to Elliot? She asked casually. I shrugged. We'll get into it later. I've got to go shower. I left her standing there, mug in hand, staring at the wall. At 9:55, I pulled into the empty parking lot outside Elliot's office. He was already there, pacing by the glass doors. Mid-50s, hair combed too hard, tie knotted a little too high. Man looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Mr. Turner, he said, shaking my hand firmly. This is unusual. Not as unusual as what's been happening on your clock, I replied. Inside, I laid it out for him. Not everything, just enough. The Burstone receipts. The Ridge Hill dinners. Photos with Cole, all time-stamped during hours she claimed to be in client meetings or training. I let the silence hang after each piece, giving him time to imagine what the rest of the file contained. I'm not looking to sue, I told him, but you might want to address it before it becomes a problem for your firm's reputation. Elliot nodded slowly. HR will have to investigate. She won't see this coming. That's the point, I said, and I'm sure you'll keep my name out of it. He agreed. We shook hands again, and I left, deliberately not looking back. When I got home, Vanessa was on the couch in yoga pants, staring at a cooking show she wasn't watching. She muted the TV the moment I walked in. How was your meeting? She asked. Productive. She searched my face for some cracks she could exploit, but I gave her nothing. She forced a smile. Good. I'm glad. Her phone buzzed. She snatched it up, read the screen, and stood. I need to take this in the other room. I nodded, pretending to focus on my keys while I mentally timed her steps down the hall. The door to the guest room clicked shut. What she didn't know was that the phone call had nothing to do with work. It was from her mother. Step 2 of the plan had hit. By the time Vanessa's mother saw those photos, I'd counted on one of two reactions: denial or outrage. I wasn't disappointed. From what I overheard through the thin wall, it was outrage. I can't believe you'd humiliate me like this, her mother's voice hissed, faint but clear. Mom, it's not. Don't you dare tell me it's not what it looks like. You've made a fool of yourself and everyone who knows you. The conversation ended with a curt, we'll talk when you've cleaned this mess up. When she emerged, her face was tight, cheeks flushed. She moved straight past me into the kitchen, poured a glass of wine despite it being barely noon, and didn't say a word. Monday morning was when she truly started to slip. She left for work later than usual, blaming traffic patterns, but the GPS tracker told me otherwise. She drove aimlessly for 30 minutes before pulling into the office lot. Avoidance. That meant the HR call had already gone out. By noon, the mic in her car caught her muttering to herself after a phone call. They can't prove anything. I'll just say it was a client dinner. Cole will back me up. But her voice didn't sound convinced. It sounded like someone clinging to a branch that was already cracking. That evening, she came home with the brittle energy of someone trying too hard to act unaffected. She made dinner, talked about some fake new listing, and asked about my day like we were in some marriage counseling roleplay. Halfway through the meal, I set my fork down. You know, Vanessa, you've been different lately. She tensed, but kept her smile. Different how? Distracted. Like you've got one foot in another life. She gave a soft laugh that didn't reach her eyes. You're imagining things. I leaned back, studying her. Maybe. Or maybe the life you're balancing is about to tip over. For a fraction of a second, she stopped breathing. Then she recovered, spearing another bite of chicken. You're being cryptic again. I just smiled and let the silence work on her. Tuesday morning, the next slip came, right in our kitchen. She was on her laptop, typing fast, when I walked in. She slammed it shut so quickly she nearly knocked over her coffee. Something important? I asked. Just work, she said, a little too quickly. I shrugged and opened the fridge. Must be urgent for you to close it like that. I didn't close it, she began, then stopped herself, realizing she'd just confirmed she had something to hide. I didn't press. Slips work best when they think they've recovered. By Wednesday, her routine was unraveling. She left early for client meetings, but her tracker showed her parked at a strip mall for 2 hours. She came home late with a plastic smile, avoiding eye contact. That night, while she showered, I checked her purse. Inside was a folded piece of paper with a handwritten note. Call me if it gets bad, see. I photographed it and put it back exactly where I found it. The oak box was nearly full now. So full I'd started a second folder on my laptop labeled Final Act. Thursday was when she started watching me instead of the other way around. I'd catch her glancing at me over the top of her wine glass, eyes scanning for clues. She lingered near the office door more than once, as if she might just waltz in and catch me doing whatever she imagined I was doing. But she never did, because everything I needed her to see was already happening in her own life. Calls from HR, a distant mother, coincidental sightings with Cole that just happened to land on the wrong desks. Her control was slipping, and she knew it. Friday morning, she cracked. She walked into the kitchen with her phone in hand, voice sharp. Did you talk to Elliot about me? I looked up from my coffee. Why? Because HR called me in for a meeting on Monday, and my mother's been blowing up my phone about some photos she got. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? I took a slow sip, holding her gaze. If people are asking you questions, Vanessa, maybe they already know the answers. Her jaw tightened. You're trying to ruin me. No, I said, setting my mug down. You did that yourself. I'm just giving the truth a stage. She stared at me, eyes flickering between rage and fear, then turned on her heel and stormed out of the room. I waited until I heard the bedroom door slam before opening the oak box. It was time to move to the next phase, the one she'd never see coming until it was already over. By Saturday morning, Vanessa's paranoia had bloomed into full-time work. She was checking her phone every 30 seconds, pacing like a caged animal, and watching me with the eyes of someone waiting for a gun to go off. Perfect. I spent the day preparing the net. I called the PI and told him to make a delivery to the Ridge Hill Country Club on Sunday afternoon, an unmarked envelope containing a neatly curated packet of the most public-friendly evidence, photos, timestamps, and a short summary of her client meetings with Cole. The kind of thing that would circulate like wildfire in a place where gossip traveled faster than Wi-Fi. Then I called an old friend of mine, Michael, who happened to be the club's event manager, and booked a table for Sunday brunch. 6 seats. 2 for me, 2 for friends, and, most importantly, 2 for Vanessa and her guest. Sunday morning, Vanessa dressed up sharp. Too sharp for the yoga class she claimed to be going to. I didn't call her out. I just kissed her cheek and said, "Have fun. You deserve it." She was halfway to Ridge Hill by the time I pulled out of the driveway and took the back roads to the club. Michael had me seated at the perfect vantage point, a corner table with a clear view of the main dining area and the entrance. At exactly 11:47, she walked in with Cole, hand on his arm, smiling like a woman who thought she'd just pulled off the perfect double life. She didn't see me. What she also didn't see, yet, was the ripple moving through the room. People turning in their seats, leaning toward each other, whispering behind menus. The envelope had done its work. When the hostess seated her and Cole, it was like someone had turned up the volume on the gossip. Forks paused midair. Eyes followed them like they were part of the entertainment. I didn't approach. I didn't need to. The scene was writing itself that it took exactly 22 minutes for her to notice. She looked up from her mimosa, scanning the room, her smile stiffening as she realized people weren't just looking, they were judging. Cole noticed too, shifting in his seat like a man suddenly aware of a draft. At 12:12, she finally spotted me. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I just raised my glass in a slow toast and smiled. Cole leaned toward her, asking something I couldn't hear, but the way she shot me that dagger-eyed glare told me she was scrambling for an explanation. 5 minutes later, her phone buzzed. She checked it, paled, and shoved it into her purse. I already knew who it was, Elliot. HR had moved up her Monday meeting to today. I stood, settled my tab, and walked right past their table. She started to speak, but I cut her off with 4 words. Enjoy the rest, Vanessa. And then I was gone. By Monday morning, the fallout was in full swing. Her mother had stopped taking her calls. The brokerage had placed her on indefinite leave, pending review of conduct. Cole had stopped answering her texts altogether. Apparently, the country club gossip train had scared him more than HR ever could. She confronted me that evening, pacing the living room like a cornered cat. "You've destroyed me," she spat. "No," I said calmly, closing the oak box one final time. "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see the pieces." Her face twisted, but before she could speak, I handed her a plain white envelope. Inside, a single printed screenshot of her own message to Cole. "He's just a placeholder." My life started late. She stared at it like it might catch fire in her hands. "That," I said, "is the last word you'll ever get from me. Keep the house. Keep the car. Keep the mess. I'm walking away clean." I left her standing there, speechless for once in her life. And as I walked out into the cool night, oak box under my arm, I didn't feel anger or sadness, just the deep, quiet satisfaction of a man who had been underestimated for the last time. She wanted a dramatic ending? I gave her one she'd never forget.